Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. A driverless car breezed past a stopped school bus. Now the feds are investigating Waymo. And by the way, Alphabet company, which we all know as Google, owns Waymo. They own about 92.5% of Waymo. Now, Colombia pulls its U.S. ambassadors after Trump threats and insults hit a nerve. Top universities push back on Trump's education demands and that compact that he made of lists in order to receive federal funding. A lot of the universities and colleges are now saying no deal. Can you smoke weed and still own a gun? The Supreme Court is about to decide. I wonder about alcohol. Why not? ICE agents injured U.S. veterans during raids. Now, Congress wants answers. And as I've been saying for a while now, autonomous cars are supposed to be the future. Now, my car itself has some driverless features, but every now and again, I have to touch the steering wheel. I don't have a Tesla or electric car. I have a gas car with some of these features on it. And it could be relaxing on long drives, either be 2, 4, 6. And I know a lot of you people who are probably from down south where you guys can drive 10 hours. Now, any drive over 4 hours for myself, I would like to fly. That's just me. I'm not a huge on driving, so to speak. Ask my wife. But when a Waymo Robotaxi scooted past a stopped school bus with flashing red lights in Atlanta, Georgia, federal regulators stepped in, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is now investigating approximately 2,000 vehicles to see if self-driving tech can handle the bare minimum, pausing for children unloading. I wonder if they're going to throw Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, a lot of these luxury car brands that have invested billions of dollars to make sure that the technology is pretty much soundproof with a lot of redundancies. I wonder if they're going to do this with Waymo. And do not forget, Alphabet, which is kind of, Google in itself, is the third largest tech company behind Amazon and Apple. So I wonder how they're going to attack this. I don't know how they're going to improve the technology. But in some regards, people say that Waymo is saying F those kids because it scooted right past the stop sign that the school buses had pointed out. And this is going to be another piece, another indicator, so to speak, that these driverless cars are going to have input inside their technology so they abide by the rules so innocent children do not get hit by the way of this technology. I'll keep you guys definitely updated on that as well. Now, I don't know if you recall that President Trump said some really inflammatory things towards the president of Colombia, Petro, because Colombia, recall, is U.S. ambassadors after Trump labeled President Gustavo Petro an illegal drug leader, okay, and threatened terror. So another president is calling another president an illegal drug leader. And the move signals a diplomatic rupture between two countries, longtime partners in the war on drugs. Now, I just want to point out some of the things that were said here. And right here, this is what President Trump stated. He said it has become the biggest business in Colombia by far. And Petro does nothing to stop it, despite large-scale payments and subsidies from the U.S., that are nothing more than a long-term ripoff of America. As of today, these payments or any other form of payment or subsidies will no longer be made to Colombia, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. Now, Trump's post followed Petro accusing the U.S. of murder after a September strike targeting what Trump said were confirmed narco terrorists, and the U.S. government officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty in territorial waters. Fisherman Eduardo Cruzada had no ties to the drug trade, and his daily activity was fishing, Petro said in a post on X. So let's play it out. Let's take, for instance, that this was indeed a fisherman and America has committed a murder. Now, by any chance, when Gustavo Petro of Colombia stated that America commit murder, do you guys believe that was disrespectful and President Trump took offense to that as if he didn't have the right to speak his mind or his emotion, or in fact, Are we to fall in line with the President of the United States stating that we have enough evidence, we have enough intel, monitoring, tracking, UAV, we have recon, personnel on ground, and in fact, we have enough evidence that this was indeed a narco terrorist that was trying to transport illegal substance like cocaine to America? Do we have enough evidence? Have that evidence been produced? Have that evidence been revealed? Because on many occasions of a lot of these boats being targeted and destroyed by the way of the United States government, by the way of Colombia and Venezuela, a lot of those companies who are known, by the way, to transport illegal drugs to America. But in fact, do we act because of a belief? Do we act based on assumption? Do we act because we have an unction that we believe that they are indeed trafficking drugs to America? Or do we have tangible evidence and proof that we can provide to the American people and state that they are indeed transporting drugs to America? The only reason why I'm asking that question, ladies and gentlemen, is because I have yet to see any evidence come outside of the Trump administration to indeed and give us factual points of interest that state that this is indeed narco-terrorism, or this is in fact drugs being trafficked. I'm just stating a fact here because, again, we need proof and evidence in order to basically commit a lot of these attacks and destroying that could be, as the president of Colombia is stating, a fisherman. Now, am I in line to believe the president of Colombia? No. The only thing I'm asking for is the American government to provide the proof and evidence to the American people of us using our tax dollars of missiles and UAVs and attack helicopters to show the American people you are indeed using our tax dollars the right way. Because I want you guys to think about 20, 30 years ago when the U.S. debt was only $5 trillion. And certain administrations have balanced the budget to a certain degree. Right now, we are $37 trillion in debt, moving on to 38. So again, I would like to see the proof in that. And I just wanted to point out some of the highlights of that story. I think it's very interesting. Now, with the deadline looming for the Compact for Academic Excellence, elite universities, including University of Arizona, are saying no. They reject Trump's admin conditions linking federal money to ideological compliance. Is this reform or coerced control? Because he's like, you know what? You guys are not going to get any federal money if you don't fall in line. Now, I thought that conservatism or conservatives, and what I mean by that is not just plain conservative-minded people like myself that don't affiliate themselves with the Republican Party, that don't affiliate themselves with liberalism or even the Democratic Party or even independents. I thought we were for less government and free trade and open markets and decreasing the amount of government, as Trump has done in some regards. But is this federal overreach? That's the questions I have for you guys, because I'm going to point out a key point. I just want your guys' take. Let's not be emotional today because I said something about the Republicans or I said something about the Democrats, because I'm neither. I'm very neutral. I can care less. But I want to give you guys the news unfathomed, untethered, and unapologetic in a way that you guys probably never heard it before, because I really want to chime in on this story here, okay? Now, it states here that MIT was the first school to issue a public statement. It says that the document includes principles with which we disagree. MIT President Sally Kornbluth wrote in a letter to Education Secretary Linda McMahon on October 10th, and fundamentally, the premise of the document is inconsistent with our core belief that scientific funding should be based on scientific merit alone. Now, I don't know any attributes or characteristic with MIT, some of the I guess hallmarks of how they accept their candidates to get an MIT, which is a very prestigious school that a lot of inventions, a lot of technological advances have come out. Some of the greatest minds have come out of MIT. Now, it goes on to state here that following the rejection, President Trump wrote on Truth Social that all colleges will be able to sign on, not just those that received the letter. Brown University, the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Southern California followed with statements respectfully declining the offer. And on Friday, the White House held a virtual meeting with colleges that hadn't yet sent rejection notices, including the University of Arizona, the University of Texas at Austin, Vanderbilt University, Dartmouth College, and the University of Virginia. 3 additional schools were also invited: Arizona State University, Washington University in St. Louis, and the University of Kansas, according to the Wall Street Journal. So they have all of these schools in limbo, and a lot of them are declining. But following that meeting, 2 schools, the University of Virginia and the Dartmouth College, announced they also would not be signing on to the agreement. And Dartmouth President Cyan Leah Belloc said in a letter to students and faculty on Saturday that she did not think a compact with any administration is the right approach to achieve academic excellence. UVA said it wanted no special treatment when it comes to federal funding. So a lot of these colleges, a lot of them are just flat out refusing to make this compact with the Trump administration. Now, here's some information concerning this compact. Now, the compact requirements they're stating are far-reaching. This is coming from Inside Higher Education. Now, it goes on to state that Trump officials outlined a number of new requirements for institutions that sign on, including that they ban consideration of race or sex in hiring and admissions processes. So it's kind of eradicating some tenets of DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That means everybody. Would it be LGBTQ, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, whatever it may be, Native American, American Indian. They're just saying, hey, listen, we're going to base you hiring people off their merit, all their educational background, all their skills and talents. Am I against that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. Because again, if they're going to do merit-based, then there are a lot of people from all demographics with degrees and educations and skills and certifications. So yeah, they should be on a chopping block and you pick the best candidate. But unfortunately in America, we have a history of racism and discrimination and bigotry and bias. So that's why certain civil rights, left-leaning programs like affirmative action and DEI even came about, even though it really didn't benefit foundational Black Americans. It really benefited everybody else. And you don't have to take my words for it or get emotional about it. And the reason why I got to keep saying emotional, because when I make statements, people always put these quote unquote very, I don't know, they try to be, passive aggressive in the comment section. Listen, these in some regards are the way that I look at these situations, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you agree or disagree, I want you guys to chime in, watch the video, give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, but leave your comment below so we can have that discourse. Because yesterday I was talking about the No Kings protest, and I was saying that it didn't seem very serious because people were wearing costumes and people acted. This was a drag queen show. Okay, I'm just throwing that in. But it was a lot of shady characters. It didn't really seem like they were really saying no kings, that this is not authoritarianism or totalitarianism or dictatorship in those regards. And one comment was beneficial for my psyche. And if I can paraphrase this, and correct me if I'm wrong once again, it went on the lines that the reason why they're wearing costumes is so the protest doesn't seem aggressive and violent. So no harm will come upon those who are protesting. The premise of the protest is very, very serious of being no kings. And as Donald Trump stated that he's no king, of course he's not, according to the Constitution. But nonetheless, I understood the way that subscriber or someone who watches my videos came about and gave me that information, while somebody else was like, you're stupid. It's like, okay, if that is your belief, then okay, I'm not going to fight you against what you believe that I am. I know where I am because my mama told me I'm smart, but nonetheless, I digress. I wanted to point that out though, okay? Now, it also going to say limit international undergrad enrollment to 15% of the student body. This is where I believe a lot of the universities and colleges is like, you know what? We receive top talent from around the world. And this goes back what I've been stating for a very long time, ladies and gentlemen. that we need to have homegrown intellectuals. We need to have homegrown people in tech field, in AI, in coding, computer hardware and software, robotics, etc. Because we keep recruiting the top talent around the world that keeps America on top. But the perception and the view that we have of America is fading away. We're looking like every other country, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't mean when it regards to ethnicity and or race, because America is a melting pot, believe it, if you believe it or not, but we are a melting pot. But I'm saying that some of the very hallmarks of America, we have more parades and celebration from people from other countries than we do anywhere else. I was it California? I forgot what state I was in, but they were having a Spanish conquistador parade. And then when I went to DC, they were having a Caribbean parade. And I'm like, I've never been to any of these other countries where I saw any sort of American parade. Never. Now, I'm pretty sure they may have that in Europe. And I'm not saying they don't have the right to celebrate their culture in America. I'm not stating that, but I'm saying the Rose Parade, we have these American parades that really doesn't coincide with a lot of these other ones. Like it's so mixed and mastered that the vision we have of America, in my opinion, is slowly disappearing, and we're becoming something totally different. While these other countries stay intact, they still have their same culture. They still have their same traditions, while a lot of American traditions and cultures is simply dying. Are we too much of a melting pot? This has nothing to do with race or ethnicity. This has everything to do with nationality. That's the questions I have. But let me carry on here. Those are questions for you guys to define. Now, it also states to define and interpret male, female, woman, and man according to reproductive functions and biological processes. Why not? I cannot disagree with that one. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to fall in line with the president with this one. There's only male and female. Now, whatever you decide you are to quote unquote your, what they call them? He, they, them, your pronouns, whatever you believe you are. But on paper, biologically, as they stated right here, reproductive functions and biological processes, there's only two. There's only two in nature. Well, there are some, I think it's reptiles or animals that may have both biological organs. But again, when and as it pertains to Homo sapiens, male and female. Now, if you get surgery, your DNA and your genetics still state that you are male and female, either your XY or XX chromosomes, okay? So I digress. Let me move on. Require applicants to take standardized tests such as the SAT or ACT. Now, that's what I thought that was already occurring, because I had to take the SAT because I'm from the East Coast, and I understood that if you was on the West Coast, most people took the ACT. So what I found out that a lot of international students take whatever standardized tests from their countries, and somehow a lot of the colleges in America, they view the results and say, okay, come in, that's good enough. Basically. So he's cutting that out as well. I don't see nothing wrong with that. You just have to take another test. Okay? Because this is America. We have our own test. Because here's the thing. I don't know if any other countries allow the SAT or ACT results for them to be accepted in colleges in Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, whatever. Okay? I don't know that, but I know in America that you should take the SAT or ACT. Okay? So I agree with that as well. Clamp down on grade inflation. Does that mean grading on a curve? Someone defined that as well. Restrict employees from expressing political views on behalf of the institution. I think this is another roadblock and why a lot of colleges are now disagreeing, because there may be the dean of students, the president of that school that may have some political views. And because they're in such high position in that school, that it may, on the surface, seem as though they're speaking on the behalf of the institution. Because if you're the dean of, let's say, Chapel Hill of North Carolina, the Tar Heel, so to speak, and you come out and you say, well, I'm a Republican, but I have some liberal views, and what the Republicans are doing today is authoritarianism. And so you're like, nope, You can't have none of that. You can't have any political views, which is, in my opinion, no matter your capacity, violates your constitutional right of freedom of speech, right? And I know it's very explicit. It states that from expressing political views on behalf of the institution. Now, I guess just a simple sentence stating that these are my personal views and it does not reflect the views that the institution have. And then you make your comment. Could that pass? Could that be one of the tenets of statements that need to be made prior to saying such political views? I don't know. It's just what the public depicted as, the way that it view in the public eye and social media and mass media. That's just the way that it looks, ladies and gentlemen. Now, shut down departments that punish, belittle, or spark violence against conservative ideas. That is the one drop in the bucket that universities said absolutely not. That absolutely not. Shut down departments that punish, belittle, or spark violence against conservative ideas. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say this is one of the reasons why Charlie Kirk got murked, is because universities allowed him to speak, but they were being demonized and punished because of their conservative ideas. Now, I haven't heard any stories that was relating to, but I know people far stretch the truth and then it becomes a lie. But shut down departments that punish, belittle, or spark violence against conservative ideas. Now, I don't know why anyone will spark violence or belittle or punish people against conservative ideas. Now, some people may allude to discrimination and bias, whether it be LGBTQ or race in those regards. But again, I don't see nothing wrong with it, but I'm pretty sure there's more to it than what we see on the surface here. There always is. There's always an underlying meaning that really hides itself in the text. Anonymously poll students and employees on compact compliance and publish their results. So are they adhering to the compact for your school to receive federal aid? When you say anonymously poll students, does that mean that they don't have to put their name, their student ID, their social security number, their date of birth, their no identifying information, so they can make sure that the compact is still being compliant, and then publish their results? Publish the results to who? The world, the federal government, because that's where you're getting aid. Again, there's so much here, okay? The Justice Department would enforce the terms of the agreement. The Justice Department will enforce the terms of the agreement. Why not the Department of Education? Why won't they enforce the terms of agreement? Oh, that's right, because they are dismantling the Department of Education. So it will no longer be around. So now you're going to have the Justice Department to enforce it. Wow. Colleges that sign and are found to violate the compact would face significant fiscal consequences. Punishments. Punishments are coming. And a cover letter to the 9 universities sent October 1st, officials said that with this compact, the government will be assured that signatory schools are complying with civil rights law, good thing, and pursuing federal priorities with vigor. In exchange, university will see multiple positive benefits, which could include increased overhead payments with feasible, substantial, and meaningful federal grants and other federal partnerships. Wow. So again, it seems as though that the government is putting a lot of stipulations on federal grant money. And a lot of people are asking, is this federal overreach? Is this increasing the government, but simultaneously decreasing the government regulations? Because you're going to dismantle the Department of Education, but then give the enforcement of said compact to the Department of Justice. I wonder how that's going to pan out. And for you guys who are thinking about certain things that's going to be affected, if you are in school and receive federal grant money, if you have children who may be trying to apply for federal grants and receive grant money, these are a lot of the grants that are going to be affected, because if those schools don't sign on with the president's compact, then the students who apply to those schools will not receive the federal Pell Grant, that $7,395, okay? The Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, that's could lead up to $4,000 annually. And guess what? You can receive multiple federal grants, by the way. We're talking about all this money is going to be wiped away from yourself as well as your children that may be going to school. The teacher education assistance for college and higher education. That's another $4,000, okay? And also that so-called free, oh, by the way, Pell Grant for Children of Fallen Heroes. Are they going to affect the veterans now? Wow, it's getting rough out here in these university and college streets. Free application for federal student aid. Are they now going to charge your students to fill out an application? Now, I went to college and I remember filling out an application. I had to pay to fill out the application. Isn't this a capitalist society where you have to fill out an application to go to school, but you have to pay for the application to be filled out? That is absolutely crazy to me. I want you guys to think about this. You guys are filling out an application to obtain a job opportunity. You're trying to get a career in science. You got to fill out an application. They charge you $500 to fill out the application. You're like, wait a minute. I'm trying to get a job so I can pay bills and move on with my life, but I got to pay you $500 just to fill out the application. What if I don't get the job? Then you just lost $500. So what if you don't get the grant? What if you don't get into that school? I want you guys to think about that. Now, granted, $500 is a ridiculous number. I think the highest school application fee that I've seen was roughly around $50 to $100. I've never seen one over $100. There's probably some out there that's over $100, but I think the average is probably about $50 to $65. But it's just crazy to me that I'm going to fill out an application for $50 and then turn around and have to pay you tuition and room and board if I'm out of state and I can't, travel back and forth to my home. So take, for instance, if you go to Penn State and they say, okay, the application fee is $50. So you fill out $50 and it goes in. And let's say, for instance, you get accepted to the school and then you got to pay Penn State $40,000 a year. This is a money grab a lot of universities have. So do they really need the federal funding? Possibly not. Now they're going to have decreased students coming because they won't receive federal grant money. So their membership or their school body is going to decrease in number because the lack of federal funding. I'm just looking at the whole capitalist system for what it's worth, because think about it. There's some people who are trying to go to colleges on scholarships, and a lot of those colleges receive federal aid and federal subsidies. So they won't be able to afford a lot of students, a lot of these scholarships who are 4.0 students, valedictorians, salutatorians. They score almost perfect on the SATs and ACTs. That's going away too. Believe me, this is a trickle down effect. It's going to affect so many people because of this compact with the federal government. Now, let me show you one more thing, because a lot of schools are being affected by this, okay? A lot of schools are being affected by this. Mapping federal funding cuts to U.S. colleges and universities. Now, all over the board, all these schools are being affected. All of these schools are being affected. And I'm gonna show you one more thing. I'm gonna blow this up as large as I can, because I want you guys, again, if you have children, you have teenagers about to go to college, yourself is in college, here's a list of federal grant funding to university and college that the Trump administration has targeted for termination. I'm not going to read all these schools. You know why? We're talking about 61 pages of schools. 61 pages of schools that are going to be affected, ladies and gentlemen. 61, Alabama A&M University, University of Alabama in Huntsville, Tuskegee University. Okay, and you notice a lot of HBCUs are on here. Auburn University, which is not a HBCU, it is a PWI. I'm just going to go to the first. Can we go to the first couple of 5 pages? Okay. Look at all these schools. You guys can see them on your screen here. You guys can see them. Let's go to the first 5 pages. 3. Here's number 3, 4. And we're only in California, by the way. A lot of public schools. Okay. So that's the first 5 pages after 61 pages of schools that are already targeted for termination of federal grant money. They had another list down here, federal funding to university and college that the Trump administration has targeted for termination by state and undergraduate and graduate student population. Now that's only 4 pages, okay? But again, this is coming from the AmericanProgress.org. You guys may want to look this over because it's absolutely crazy to me. Wow. Now, the Supreme Court will decide whether people who regularly use marijuana can legally own firearms. This case could redraw the line between Second Amendment rights and federal drug law enforcement and how they're going to know who's a regular weed smoker. Are they going to go to states that weed is legal in, that marijuana is legal in, and they're going to say, well, you buy marijuana every day. You buy marijuana in this many ounces every week or every month. So we know that you are an advocate weed smoker, and now we're going to strip you of your constitutional rights. I don't know how they're going to do this. Are they going to stop in blood tests? Same thing as stop and frisk, but stop in blood tests? Are they going to look with a flashlight in your eyes and see if your pupils are dilated? How are they going to test this? How about this? How are they going to test this in states where marijuana is not legal, but people still smoke marijuana in those states? How they're going to test it? The Supreme Court to decide? Now, I gave this some quick thoughts. Why not alcohol? Why alcohol is not up on the chopping block like marijuana? And I started to think about it. I started to think like, you know what? Everybody smokes weed. White people, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, everybody smokes weed. Now, they may paint a picture like black people smoke more weed than other groups of people, which is not true. Okay, we can go back to Woodstock. Everybody smoked weed. Let's just keep it a buck here. Everybody does. And I started to think, marijuana is one of those substance that cannot be controlled. Well, again, when I mean that can't be controlled, that many of people can just get a plant and, grow marijuana in their house, in their backyard, and you'll never be the wiser. Some people have them in greenhouses that keeps in the smell of marijuana, not the actual burning of the bud, but just kind of the natural smell that marijuana gives off. So you can't, in some states like California, Oregon, Washington, I think there's over 30 states that marijuana, medical and recreational, is legal in, but they really can't stop people from growing it personally. So why marijuana and not alcohol too? Why not both of them? Okay. The reason why I'm asking that, and you guys are about to see very quickly here. Now, are part smokers drug users only when they're high? And can they and other drugs users legally own guns? My question is, Supreme Court, why not alcohol? Because let's provide evidence. Alcohol is associated with higher risk of overdose, severe liver and heart damage, and increased violence and accidental injuries, while marijuana is not linked to overdose deaths and has a lower risk of societal harm. Meaning when you're smoking marijuana, not marijuana mixed with cocaine and marijuana mixed with heroin, just plain old marijuana, that you're not going out trying to hurt anyone. Right? You there, you smoking yourself a joint or a blunt, or you smoking out of a bong, and you just like, man, I'm stuck. Like, no one is committing crimes high off of marijuana. People are going to chill. They get the munchies. They want to go to a buffet. They want to relax. They go to sleep. And think about a lot of veterans that use marijuana for PTSD and medical marijuana use. People use it for pain and CBD and all the products that come out of, would it be the one that have THC or CBD, whatever it may be. But again, the evidence and science, we're talking about over 40 years of back research that marijuana is not linked to overdose deaths and has a lower risk of societal harm. You know why? Because the American Indians, the Aborigines, when they really cultivated marijuana, they call it the peace pipe. Why did they call it the peace pipe? Because when the Choctaw and the Seminoles, when they was getting high, they wasn't scalping people. They wasn't chopping off people. They wasn't committing harm. They wasn't committing war. They were high. They were chilling. However, both can impair cognitive function, increase the risk of addiction, and high potential long-term effects on the brain, especially with heavy or early life use, though research is mixed and ongoing. Now, what I've read about marijuana and alcohol addiction, people are not addicted to marijuana. There's no research that backs addiction of marijuana. itself, like a chemical dependency, like meaning when that person stopped smoking marijuana, they threw up, they had night sweats, they had night terrors, they had shakes. No, the result of this research was that people was addicted to the high of marijuana, not marijuana itself, where people are addicted to alcohol. And when they have withdrawals from alcohol, that's why you never heard of I'm pretty sure there's one out there, maybe in California, Oregon, a marijuana treatment where people go in so they can no longer be addicted to the high of marijuana versus alcohol addiction, and they go to rehab because they have a chemical dependency on alcohol. And when they don't have alcohol in their system, they get sick. That's not the same thing with marijuana, totally different. So let's go down to the alcohol effects. Acute effects: impaired judgment, reduced coordination, potential blackouts, and vomiting. Blackouts, where in some records, a lot of, unfortunately, rape occurs around alcohol, and how certain people, male and female alike, but mostly on the male side, will have females to drink a certain amount of alcohol, whether they black out or their judgment is impaired, okay? And they do things that they probably wouldn't do if they were sober, okay? And I'm not giving excuses, I said both, okay? Long-term effects. Risks include chronic liver disease, pancreatic, heart damage, and stomach issues, okay? That's where the vomiting comes in. Societal harm. My buddy used to tell me, hey, man, when I drink tequila, I get violent, man. When I drink whiskey, I get violent. When I drink vodka, I get violent. A significant contributing factor to violent crimes, violent crimes, domestic violence, and sexual assault. Alcohol is also a leading cause of accidental injuries and death, meaning drinking and driving. People commit suicide off of alcohol, right? They're not in their right mind when they're drinking alcohol. Addiction. Alcohol is known to cause significant and potentially fatal physical withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, addiction. Marijuana effects: impaired judgment, altered perception, and potential for anxiety or paranoia. Yeah, I don't know what marijuana they smoke, but when my uncles used to smoke marijuana, they never got paranoid. They must drink some Calm Bud, some Purple Haze. I don't know what they got. That's big, as they had in DC. I'm originally Washingtonian from DC. They call it Love Boat, where they used to dip marijuana in embalming fluid. Yeah, if you're just smoking plain marijuana, you don't have angel dust and all this other mushrooms and acid mixed in. I've never heard anyone tell me that, yeah, man, after I smoked some marijuana, I was paranoid, I was anxious. Most people just go to sleep, get hungry, relax, chill. I don't know. Long-term effects. Risks include potential negative effects on the brain development, memory, and learning. Yeah, a lot of weed smokers don't remember nothing, especially with use before the age of 25, because before the age of 25, your frontal lobe is not fully developed. But after the age of 25, supposedly, based on the research, your frontal lobe is developed. Research on long-term brain structure and function is mixed. It can also be associated with increased risk of heart disease and stroke with regular use, and many trigger or worsen symptoms in individuals with certain mental health conditions, okay? But a lot of people with mental health conditions, like veterans, also use marijuana for PTSD. So again, the research, okay? We already know about alcohol. Societal harm. This is harm to the public, ladies and gentlemen. We already kind of went over with alcohol. Marijuana use is not associated with the same level of violence or crime as alcohol. Then some people are going to say, well, Blacklogic, why we got all the crime in Chicago, all the crime in Baltimore, all the crime in New York? I would simply tell you because they're not high. They're not high off of marijuana. That's just a joke. That's just a joke. It's probably the truth, but just a joke. Addiction. While less physically, as I was stating, okay, less physically addictive than alcohol, dependency can still develop. Again, they form a dependency on the high, but their body has no withdrawal effects like the shakes and sweats and all of those things, the same effects that you have with alcohol. Overdose, no documented case, let me blow it up, no documented case of overdose death from marijuana alone. You know why? Because your body shuts down and you go to sleep. So again, I have no idea why the Supreme Court is talking about marijuana and not talking about alcohol. Oh, as I was stating, they can control alcohol because not too many people in the hills of North Carolina and West Virginia are making moonshine. And if they're making moonshine illegally, it's probably in those little areas. But everybody, and you need equipment to make moonshine, right? You need special equipment to make moonshine. But marijuana, you can just have a plant in your home. A couple leaves grow, it falls off. I don't know what to do after that. You maybe roll in some white boy paper. I don't know. But still, I'm just trying to figure out why marijuana with guns and not alcohol. Because after the information we just read, which is consistent with 40 years of research, people who are smoking marijuana are not then going out taking guns and causing societal harm, but they would with alcohol. People conduct a lot of fights with alcohol. Now, last but not least, now this hit homes for me because a lot of the lawmakers are slamming ICE agents after video showed that U.S. military veterans being arrested and injured during immigration enforcement operations. And here's the message. No one, including those who serve, is off limits. And I would agree. If you're violating or you're committing crimes, if you are protesting and you're touching ICE agents, then yeah, you're going to get harmed in a certain degree. But I wonder what these veterans did. It stated here that the Guardian revealed how U.S. veterans have been injured and arrested at protests against ICE deportation. Some of the most decorated military veterans in Congress say they are outraged after a report in the Guardian revealed U.S. military veterans have been arrested or injured amid protests of Donald Trump's deportation campaign, and he pushed to deploy the National Guard to American cities. I went to war 3 times for this country to defend the rights of Americans to say I may not like, said Representative Jason Crow, a Democrat from Colorado and a former Army Ranger who was awarded the Bronze Star for his service in Iraq as a platoon leader with the 82nd Airborne Division, a very prestigious airborne division, by the way. Now there's a time for every American to speak out. Now, the only thing I have against this, if you guys are protesting against illegal immigrants being deported, then you are 1,000% wrong, sir. That goes against the Constitution. That goes against immigration laws. Because if they're illegally in the country, they should be deported. Now, if you are protesting that American citizens are being harmed through this mass deportation, then I stand 10 toes down with you, brother. But other than that, I thank you guys for joining me. You guys have a great and wonderful day. This is Blacklogic.